We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Just a question of taste with you, well, you've gone sour. You want the world plus everything, but it won't work an hour. And now your questions are guilt creeping, and you go and buy her flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. Just shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals this fine Sunday evening, and it is Stu and Mitch who join me as always. Good evening, gents.
Good evening.
Good to see you. And as always, we'll open the floor to anybody in the chat if you've got any questions. I want to bring some topics up, and some good ones already coming in. First of all, congratulations to Scotland, Stu. Finally managed to get a win.
Yep, they were fantastic against the 10 men of Croatia.
I didn't want to mention that.
To be fair, they really are punching above the weight. They're in the top groups in Europe, and all the games they've played, they've acquitted themselves really well, and they've only ever lost by 1 goal. And like most things, when things are going your way, there's been some dubious decisions, but the togetherness that they showed and the spirit and the belief to actually get the job done on Friday night was fantastic. Except for me, I ended up drinking far too much, and then I had to do a brunch yesterday, and I was suffering all day at work today. So but it was great. And tomorrow they're away to Poland, so I'll be watching that.
Good stuff. As always, we will be delving into your questions. As I've already said, Newcastle women got a 1-1 draw this afternoon. Official attendance at the ground as well, 11,620, braving the colder conditions, it has to be said. And if you're wondering why Stu is looking a little bit hot, his AC's gone off. He mentioned it at the start of the show. So what are you basking in at the minute inside?
It's now 32.
That'll warm all our viewers up listening to that. But yes, a valuable point for Newcastle women who, sitting just below Southampton in the table level on points. But thanks to them for that. And England have kicked off 4 minutes into the game, 0-0 with Ireland. I will keep you up to date with that. Anthony Gordon starts the game. Sandro has now played 5 times for Italy since he's returned from ban and has been man of the match 5 times. Scored the winner again the other night. Is he really good, or are his teammates below par? And if so, how do we get his best? It's an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, he is basically, playing well for Italy. It has to be said, Stu. But can't get or tie down a regular place in Newcastle's team yet.
No, he's a quality player. I don't think anyone doubts that. But what we really have to look like with Tonali is he's probably genuinely only into his 3rd month of being with Newcastle, if you take the ban out of it. And he's like starting again. If you look at the progress that's been made by Livramento, by Hall, by Gordon, he's having to get used to a different style of football. And there's no doubt, we say it often enough, but the cream always rises to the top. And I'm sure during the season he'll get himself in the starting 11 and stay in it. And it's good for us, because it's also good for us that he's getting game time, so he is fit when he is called upon. and I've got a feeling that he might actually start next week, but we'll see what happens.
3 players playing for England. Yeah, I'm a little bit late to the party. I hadn't been on the internet or TV. But yes, Livramento and Hall both starting as well. So good to see 3 Newcastle players. When was the last time? Probably the Entertainers era.
97 it was.
97, there you go. Dalglish, probably manager by that stage. So
It was Batty, Rob Lee and Shearer.
great stuff. Good knowledge. Yeah, Tonali, Mitch, interesting, isn't it? I mean, Bruno keeping him out of the team, I would have suggested, or maybe Sean Longstaff. But yeah, he is playing very well for his country.
Not just about players, it's also about systems. The Italian manager has a system that he knows what he wants to get out the players in certain positions, and Tonali fits in very well with that. It certainly doesn't hurt us letting them have game time like that and let them sort of revel in being a star player in that and being able to showcase his talent. I've got no doubt. I still think that Eddie's working out how to get the best out of the players that he has at his disposal and how to make them work together within the system he wishes. And again, I think it's significant that when Tonali has come on, Bruno's been the one that shifted into a different midfield role, and Tonali's then sat. And I think in the games that really matter, when he's got to put his best 11 out, I think you'll find that that's how he works it, is that Tonali will play in the base of that midfield 3, and Bruno will be asked to apply his trade further up the pitch.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, mate, to be honest. It's great. It's a great problem to have. More problems, hopefully, on their way with other players returning as well. We'll watch and see. Nice top, Mitch, says Roger. Yeah, it is. You've had that a couple of weeks now, haven't you? It's nice. Is that a training top?
It's it's the dark version of the pre-match, the one with all the feathers on. If you look carefully, the feathers are all on this, just very, very faintly.
Ah, yes. Yeah,
so it's they do a dark version, a light version.
Yeah.
And I think the women were wearing another new version of the pre-match shirt today as well.
Yeah. Okay, great stuff. Should the club sue the Premier League for the clear rules that was to stop the club from progressing? Stu, we're constantly asked questions about this, and the Man City case rumbles on, and more letters gone out from Man City this week, I think, to the Premier League clubs. It's still rumbling on that, isn't it? But I think until the case comes to a close, or the cases come to a close, I guess Newcastle will just sit and watch and maybe decide what to do at a later date.
They're definitely keeping the powder dry, that's for sure. And the Man City, as you said, sending that letter was just a shot across the bows, wasn't it? It's to say, try and change it, but if you don't change it properly, we'll take you to court again. And they can't afford to be dragged through the mud, the Premier League. So for me, and I know we've referenced this so many times over the last probably 18 months or so, but our owners, I believe, are off they don't want to rock any boat. But if they feel they get pushed too much and it becomes too blatant, more blatant than it already has been, then I've got no doubt that they will press the button. And I'm sure Nick DeMarco has got his checks, his checks ready and waiting. This is how much I'm looking for. But there will be changes. Whether there'll be enough to satisfy everyone is unlikely, because you can't do that. Everyone has their own agenda. There's 20 teams there with 20 different agendas. But what you can't do is be the key phrases from the Man City case, the APT case that they had was unlawful. And you can't just tinker the rules and keep them being unlawful, because they'll just be challenged straight away. So I think what we'll be doing is sitting back and letting it play out and then seeing if it's how much of it is in our favour. And if necessary, then I'm not saying they'll never sue them, but I think it would be a last resort. It'd give adverse publicity that they don't need.
Yeah, interesting times. This case certainly is going to change, what we know as the transfer window and PSR. I think one way or another, Mitch. It is a waiting game, isn't it, for Newcastle United?
It does, and as longer it goes on, more's coming out. from people of a better opinion than I. So, for example, on the latest Price of Football podcast, Nick DeMarco says very clearly that PSR is anti-competitive and is designed to curb the progression of some teams at the cost of protecting some of the established teams. And he says that quite clearly. Now, if somebody like that is speaking that openly, you know how bad it is. It's that simple. The very fact that the amendments brought in were referred to colloquially and in writing by a number of people as the Newcastle amendments, I think gives us legal fuel to run and run and run for years. Why haven't we done anything about it yet? Well, Man City are doing more dirty work at the moment, really. And let them get on with it. Let them be painted as the bad guys. Got to remember, we come in, our owners came into this being painted as bad guys before they'd even approved the deal. There's still a narrative that money from the Middle East is bad and money from America is good. There is still certain things that the minute we make a move, there'll be people yapping going, "Hey, we told you what they would do and what they'd be like when they come into the league and there's this and there's that." So I think we're being quite smart about it. As frustrating it is, because frankly, I'd like nothing better for PIF to wheel out the biggest, most expensive sports legal team in the world ever and just flatten everything. Because I think as time goes on, day by day, the Premier League are looking weaker and weaker on a number of fronts legally, from PSR to how they apply those rules, how they don't apply those rules in some cases and beyond. The on dodgy ground on so many different situations. And these latest amendments that they're talking about wanting to vote through, the implication seems to be that they're really just a very slight hack of what's already been deemed illegal in some parts. And again, we've got to remember the Premier League can talk about, well, you know, we only lost on 4 points and we won on 28 or whatever it was. Well, it's like being saying, "Oh, I was shot at by 6 bullets and only one of them hit us in the head." The minute they lose on one, they lose everything. And so these new amendments, I don't think there's absolute any way in hell they can be robust legally when they've been written in the time frame that they're talking about. There's just not. And again, I come back to the fact that somebody like Nick DeMarco is speaking very openly now about what his opinion on these rules are and how they stand, would suggest to me that the Premier League are trying to rush this through in the hope that they can sort of chemical alley it out and say there's nothing to see here and everything's fine, because it's not fine. And I find Man City's aggressive tactics now quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Lots of questions, of course, coming in about that. We will, we'll try to come back to them if we can, but there's other topics to talk about tonight. Chip, as you're right, he says we may as well let Man City do the legwork, then we can come in and get them when they least expect it. It's a similar topic, but away from it. He says, Craig Lee says, can Liverpool and Arsenal take City to court for compensation if they lose their case against the Premier League? If so, surely that's a green light for us to sue the clubs and behave in a non-competitive manner. Do you think other clubs would do that? I mean, we've seen some clubs side with Newcastle and some clubs not side with Newcastle, Stu. It's an interesting question from Craig.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of jostling for position, but Craig's said it exactly right. And it's very interesting that there was certain clubs that were of the red cartel persuasion that had leaked to a journalist that might be their intention. Again, it's just old mind games and psychology and stuff like that. I don't think Man City give a flying fig if they get taken to court if someone tries to sue them, because what Man City have done, and it's been proved in a court that it's unlawful how they've been restricted. It's for me, it's too much of an ask. But he's right. If let's say Liverpool said, well, we could have won 3 leagues in a row if Man City hadn't spent what they had spent, then that would for me it would create a counter argument where teams like Newcastle, teams like Villa, teams like Forest, Man City themselves, even to a point Chelsea, it would be a restriction of trade where you're not letting people spend the money. But it for me, it just smells of they wanting all the shiny marbles, and I really don't think they've got the stomach, or their owners have the. I wouldn't say they haven't got the financial clout to do it, but the willingness to spend that money to do it, I think, is debatable.
Mitch, would you agree with what Stu said there?
Well, I also think it's a move made at a time when the Premier League are desperate for allies and desperate to stop Man City making them look like fools. It's almost like an idle threat to leak this to Klein journalists to say that, oh, this is what they're planning. They're planning to sue you. I don't think that'll threaten Man City one little bit or their owners. In fact, if anything, probably make them more bloody determined to win their cases. Because where does this end? How about Leeds and Burnley coming back to sue Everton and the Premier League because the Premier League failed to apply points deductions prudently and timely, and therefore teams have been relegated, whereas if those Premier League points deductions had been applied in the correct season, teams would have stayed up and not got relegated and been forced to sell players for PSR, etc., etc., etc. Once you allow legal challenges for things like that, it opens Pandora's box to all kinds of silly nonsense. And it starts to affect the sporting integrity of the competition. That, when is it going to end? Are we going to say, well, I don't know, are we going to say club relegated now from this season who've lost out to a dodgy VAR call officiated by a referee who's currently suspended because they're going to query his judgments about what he might or might not have been doing in a travel lodge the night before their game? You start opening Pandora's box to all kinds of things once you start to allow legal challenges like that and compensation for stuff like that. It's a little like what happened with Sheffield United and West Ham over the Tevez situation. And Sheffield United were given a little bit of money and patted on the head and asked to go away and be quiet, and they did. And it's a shame they didn't in some respects. But at the same time, I'll be interested to see some stage in the not too distant future. I think the decision of a major football competition in Europe will be decided in a court and not on the field of play. And that, to me, will sound the death knell of football.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. We'll watch that with open eyes. And as I said, not sure how long this is going to take. That's usually the next question we'll get asked in the chat: is how long is this going to go on? When will we have an answer? Nobody knows, unfortunately. Mitch, internet dropped out there. We'll get him back in. Derek Sharp says Leon going bankrupt shows that Man U and other Premier League clubs with big debts are treading a dangerous line. And Barry says, how many Premier League clubs would go out of business if their debts were called in, or they had to sell their assets to balance the debt? I mean, we've seen this, haven't we, in recent months. Barry, you're right, and Stu, it's an interesting point that he makes. We've seen lots of lower league teams go out of business, but there are these bigger teams that are doing it, and we often point to Manchester United as an example of a club that's basically got billions now. I would say probably £1 billion, maybe it's £1 billion worth of debt. I don't know. I haven't done the finances. It must be getting towards £1 billion, but it's certainly heading towards that quite quickly. But yeah, there's lots of these clubs in a position.
Yeah, it's something I've been a big advocate of when we're talking about the financial fair play. Newcastle are debt-free, and I'll mention Newcastle because that's the team we support, and this is why we're doing a Newcastle podcast. So rather than generalise, I'll keep it specific to Newcastle. They're in a position where they're debt-free and have, shall we say, we don't know what the owners are willing to spend, but they've never shown any reluctance to spend as and when we've required it to the maximum. yet they're not allowed to spend more to get them up to on an even keel where they're able to compete with the so-called bigger teams. Yet the bigger teams can spend more money but still have a debt. So if financial fair play was to be true, then you shouldn't be allowed to spend until you're out of debt, if that makes sense. You know, if someone's running with $1 billion debt and someone else with $750 million debt, how are they allowed to spend 250 million and we have to start selling academy players to balance the books? It's not right, and it's I think we all know it. It's set up to the point just to make sure it's protectionism, and this is what's been challenged. This is what's been proved to be unlawful, and that's why, as Mitch said there, that's why Nick DeMarco's been very vocal about it. And if anything, and I'm quite certain people in the Premier League would have watched or listened to his podcast that he was on. There'll be, for him, that's just a warning. You try and change this if you dare. And if you don't do it properly legally, then I'm a sports lawyer and I'll challenge you. And I'm sure, for sure, there'll be teams willing to take him on. But Man City have got their own legal team, and Nick DeMarco, as fantastic as he is, he'll willingly tell you that the one that Man City have got is panic, isn't it? It's Lord Panic. He's meant to be the cream of the crop. He's top of the game, and it's a watching remit at the moment. Let them make the mistakes and they'll get caught. But I agree with Barry. Clubs who are in debt, how are they allowed to spend money? I know it's a serviceable debt, and they're generating more money at the moment, but that's because they've been allowed to generate money. We've been restricted from challenging to get in that position because the way football's changed over the last, I would say, 15 to 20 years, and especially the Premier League, has become very global. There's a lot of international fans that are very, very fickle, and they will follow success. But if we're restrained or restricted from being successful on a consistent basis, how can we then get these fans to support us? And I've seen it myself, living abroad for as long as I have. There was always Liverpool and Man United, and then you had your Rangers and Celtic, and there was always a strong hold of Newcastle fans. There was a strong hold of West Ham fans, wherever. But over that period, you've seen Chelsea fans spring up from nowhere. You've seen Man City fans spring up from nowhere. And if we are to challenge, as we all want, we do need these global fans. But they will only come to us to the follow success, that they follow players and they follow trophies. They don't follow the teams to a point as we do, you know, and that's something that a lot of people can't get their head around. And this is when we're looking at expanding St. James's or building a new stadium. You know, it's quite clear that, for me, that our owners want the new stadium, but they'll do it and they'll spend the money. They won't borrow the money. They won't put the club into debt, you know, and then create the revenue that way. They're trying to do it the right way, and this is why Mitch says practically on every show that he's on, Saudi money's or Arab money's bad and American money's good. American money's borrowed money. How can that be good or bad? I mean, who's judging this? If the money's going into the club, then for me, if the owners are willing to put the money in, and we'll go back to something that we probably discussed maybe a year ago, I called it an escrow account. We call it a bond, so the club can't get into trouble. And that's what financial fair play was apparently for, to protect the clubs. Okay, there's enough money. If these owners decide their playthings boring them now and they want out, the club can run for at least 12 months, which would then allow anyone in the world who wants to get involved in a top Premier League club to come and buy us. So that would be the caveat for me, where they've left the money in. But if you've got a club running off a debt where they're having to pay a high interest rate on that debt and they're still able to collect money, it's not right. And we all know it. We all know that. And I know we're sitting on the side of Newcastle United, and it suits us to have this argument. But football in general is the loser here, when teams are allowed to rack up debt, but yet still take the spending to 2-3 times the limit of anyone who dares challenge them. And that's wrong. And that's the anti-competitive bit that Nick DeMarco was very keen on making people aware that he's ready to go for it if necessary.
Yeah, Mitch, you dropped out. The question was from Barry. I think you saw it on the screen when you came back. He was just talking about teams going out of business. Somebody else was pointing to the fact that Lyon, are in massive financial issues, and we're just wondering, if this is something we're going to see more and
I'm struggling
more
with this
of.
connection tonight. I cannot hear a damn thing, Steve.
Oh, okay. You can't hear me at all. No, you can't hear us at all. Can you
I
hear
can
me?
now.
All right, okay. Yeah, we just wanted to know. I mean, you saw the question on the screen, I think, when you came back in, and it was just about clubs going out to debt, going into debt, like Lyon, for example, and whether we'd see more of that.
Yes, I think so. I think it's quite clear we are that there's certain clubs in Europe are in significant amount of trouble. I think you also see why Mr. Texter wanted his money out of Crystal Palace and was more interested in getting involved with Everton, because there was ways to use a term that's pertinent here, economic levers, to help these other clubs. And with the PSR, you've got to look at the history of it all. The concept of why you don't include debt was all about UEFA keeping Real Madrid and Barcelona happy. And say, well, they've got debt, but they can service that debt and it's fine. And then you've got them pulling stunts like selling next year's television rights ahead of this year, and it's gone from being clever accounting to just an absolute free for all. And this is the problem. We've lost the whole essence of what PSR was supposed to be about, or FFP as it was, and it's just become a convenient vehicle to allow those who already have to keep the haves and happy, and restrict those wishing to climb the ladder by investing their own money in the way that they want to. And it's difficult to separate that off now. Will we see more clubs in trouble? Undoubtedly, in my opinion, because there's some very interesting individuals, shall we say, owning clubs around Europe. And some of them have already been in trouble once or twice before, and some new ones will be in trouble on the horizon. And it gives me no pleasure seeing a club like Bordeaux, for example, in the fourth tier of French football. It gives me no pleasure thinking about Lyon dropping down to, I think, is it Division 2 they'll be sent to if they can't balance the books. Yeah. It means they're going to have a fire sale very soon to try and balance the books, and that's not great for them, and that's not great for the supporters. Imagine being the supporters of those clubs. And it isn't for the lack of trying on Lyon's part. The one thing I'd say, at least, they've had a damn good go. Remember, that's where we got Bruno from. And you think of the sales they've made recently, Bruno, Paquetá, and a few others, they've made quite a lot of money. So what kind of financial mess are they in to have to balance the books like that with a fire sale? And I think, well, as Barry says, Real Madrid have benefited from all sorts. They've benefited from selling their training ground to the local council and then renting it back for something like €3 a year. It's deals like that. We would tear my hair over Chelsea's hotel dealings. That's what Real Madrid and Barcelona have been doing with national government and Catalonian governments for years. And why supporters of smaller teams in Spain tear their hair out over them too constantly. So it doesn't surprise us that the same stunts are being pulled in slightly different guises elsewhere, all in the name of PSR.
Well, a lot of it's changed, Mitch, as well. It's a lot. We know this about protecting what they like to fondly call themselves as the legacy teams. But the interesting fact is, when we played Liverpool in the '74 FA Cup final, we had won more trophies in our history than them. And before Bramley took over at Chelsea, we'd won more trophies than them. And before Abu Dhabi took over at Man City, we'd won more trophies than them. So how do you get this to be legacy when these people were allowed to spend money? And I know it's on a hugely different scale, but I know I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that it was the Littlewoods Pools money that helped Liverpool get bigger. And Manchester United become globally huge, sadly, because of a disaster in Munich. And all of this, for me, is like you have certain segments of the media, certain segments of fan bases that think they're entitled to be bigger, and we should just toe the line and accept our place. And if they're not careful, it will become like American football, where there's no relegation, there's no promotion, and things like that. And that's it. What makes football, as far as I can remember, since growing up and watching football, is, and I said this about maybe a month ago, is that the teams like Derby County can win the league, Forest could win the league, Leicester won the league, which I know is a one-off. But when you're not allowing people to be able to compete, it becomes boring. And if things become boring and monotonous, people they start losing interest, and that means they stop watching. And it just stinks off the TV companies trying to write the rules, because they know they get the viewing figures when it's a Liverpool or a Man United that's playing, because that's where they get more fans worldwide. But how can we or any other team be allowed to grow that big? And what Newcastle are trying to do is grow organically within the rules, without pushing the envelope, without taking them to court. And for me, it's the right way to do it, because when we win a trophy, it'll mean much more than imagine when the takeover first happened. And I remember listening to TalkSport, and Simon Jordan said that Newcastle could go and spend 600 million in that window and it wouldn't affect them. 3 years on, they still haven't spent 600 million. But what we didn't have was the right to sell players, because we were a squad bereft of quality. And whether we like it or not, that takeover saved Newcastle United, because we were drifting into oblivion. And I don't think there's many Newcastle fans think that we wouldn't have been relegated had that takeover not happened. So should we just be grateful that we've got new owners? Should we just be grateful that we don't have to worry about relegation? Why aren't we allowed to dream? Why aren't we allowed to compete? And these are the questions that are being challenged by Manchester City. Now, they've won everything, but why should they be restricted from spending more money if they want to? And if you look at what's been spent over the last 5 years, they're not in I don't think they're in the top 3 or 4, because they've sold well. Now, whether it's right or wrong, you can always say, well, Alvarez went for 80+ million and things like that. The money is, when it comes to money, and I've said this so many times, greed spoils everything. And then all of a sudden, it's not about football, it's not about ambition, it's about balancing books and creating them, and generating the money that way. And when you have accountants running football, it becomes that boring, it becomes that monotony where people lose interest. And at the moment, we all live in a dream with what we've got. And yes, there'll be ups and downs, but there's a far more ups coming our way. And I'm comfortable in the knowledge that we have owners who really want us to succeed, not because they want Mitch or you or me to be successful and we've got bragging rights with our mates, because success in football, as in winning trophies, creates new fans, which generates more money for them. And they're aware of that. They're aware of the cycle, and they're willing to play the game. They don't want to bankroll us to the point where it causes a bit of, I suppose, reluctance from they don't want to take from us the pride of winning the trophy. They want it as much as us, but at least allow us to dream. At least allow us to play or on a level playing field. And at the moment, it's not a level playing field. And this is what's being challenged basically by Manchester City, because they have zero debt. Irrespective of who the owners are, they have zero debt. So if some company wants to sponsor them, even if it's their own company, that's up to them. And that's what Nick DeMark was saying about it being unlawful. That's what he's talked about, it being challenged. How can you tell someone? I know we've said this so many times, but we mentioned Seller. Look at how their brand's grown. Look how Newton's brand's grown, just being associated with Newcastle United. And some people forget the importance of what marketing is about, but they will turn a blind eye to certain team sponsors that don't even exist because they're not a threat. It's only Wolves, it's only Palace, that they're not a threat. So what we won't do is question that too much. We'll just wave that through. And I know Mitch talked about Crystal Palace and John Texter before, but he couldn't name the other owners of the club because they're all hidden in Delaware accounts. And that's the issue. One rule's good and one rule's bad. It's either make the rules the same for everyone or rip them up. And this it's coming to a head, isn't it? that's what's happening. It's coming to a head now.
Yeah, it's right, Mitch, isn't it? It is coming to a head. Like I said, things will change. Whether they'll be good or bad for us, who knows yet?
Yeah, it's again, it comes back to this: the Premier League are on the back foot in so many situations at the moment, and I think also don't underestimate UEFA looking from a distance at what's going on in England. All of Europe view, or the clubs in Europe view, the Premier League with envy because of the amount of money that's thrown around in the Premier League, and so seeing how UEFA want to change things going forward, I think will be interesting too. But from an English perspective, the Premier League cannot buy a win in terms of legal battles, it seems, and it does seem to be getting worse for them.
Yeah, certainly does. A lot of people asking about obviously the fact that our chairman was seen sitting with the president-elect, Donald Trump, of course, and somebody did ask the question earlier, if I can just find it. There it is, from Anthony Nicol. What did you think about our chairman sitting with Trump and Musk at UFC? Could be some great sponsor opportunity. Somebody also asking, do I think this will see some influx of American money with Newcastle United, Stu?
I don't think there'll be an influx of American money, but I think more with Trump and with our chairman, they've both got a great love for golf, and they're familiar with each other and know each other. But isn't it good for Newcastle United when people who aren't aware of who Yasser Al-Rumayyan is? Who's that? Oh, he's the chairman of Newcastle United. He's the, he's the boss of PIF. And all of this. It just gives us global exposure for free. And these are the sort of circles that he mixes in. How many people can say that they're sitting ringside with the president-elect of the United States of America? But I think more importantly, we're 37 minutes into the programme. We still haven't even mentioned me 3-1 win last week. This needs to be discussed in great detail.
Go for it, mate. Go for it.
Well, I was with Mitch, and funny enough, the last time we won 3-1, I was with Mitch as well when we beat Aston Villa. In January, it was in January then. But as everyone knows, I put this 3-1 bet on, but I was on it sounds like I've been drinking a lot recently, which I have been, but I was in Dubai last weekend and I've been at a brunch all day Saturday, and I normally drink cider, and they didn't have cider at this brunch, so I was drinking gin with lemonade, but big glasses of it, big servings of it. That carried on all day, and then I went to watch the football with Mitch, and now at UBK, where they have the Dubai mags, they don't just let you drink as much as you can for a set fee. They give you 7 tickets. Well, by half time, my 7 tickets had gone, hadn't they, Mitch? So I had to go get myself another 7 tickets to get 7 more drinks. And I ended up at where what had happened is I said to the guy who brought the drink over, I says, you're not even, I'm not stupid. I know you're just putting lemonade in this. There's no gin in it at all. I sent him back to change it. And he come back and I says, that's just the same. So Mitch took a drink of it and he went, Stu, that's really laced with gin. I think you've become immune to it. So I'd had the standard 3-1 on. But before that, I'd been telling everyone who wanted to listen to have a bet on Joe Linton to score any time. Because I'm a great believer in law of averages. And if you'd seen, I'm sure we all had the previous few games, he'd missed the sitter, he was close with this. And I thought, it's only a matter of time before he gets a goal. So I had Isak first goal, which didn't happen. So as soon as the Forest scored, I put Isak to score the next goal. That come in. And then the Joe Linton bet came in. And it was about 10 minutes to go. I said to Mitch, I'm going to the toilet for a lucky pee. I'm going to stick a tenner on Harvey Barnes scoring. And no sooner I reached the toilet when you heard this almighty roar. And then this fella's come in. I says, who scored? And he says, Barnes. Well, I nearly wet my shoes. I was that excited with it. I was like, get in. So I cleaned up quite a bit. In case the missus is listening, I won about 50 pence on the day. So it was just one of those days.
Mrs. P, how much your 20 pence bet returned?
Because she did ask as well, didn't she? And I said, I think I would have 50 pence to you. I was quite happy with it. And strangely, at the very end, Bonds was through again. And my initial reaction was, go on. And then I went, no, don't, leave it at 3-1. Because there's so many times that we have been 3-1 up and we've ended up winning 4-1 over the last few years. So it was just one of those very rare days when everything came in right. And it was great to share it in UBK with obviously Mitch and a lot of other Newcastle fans. Great people, great day, and a great result. So I just wanted to gloat a little bit that for once the 3-1 did come in, and hopefully they all like buses, and it'll happen again next Monday and the following Saturday.
Great stuff. Yeah, how's it going, Mitch? Before we go at the break, Dubai Mags, obviously new bar, and we've had you and Julie on the show, and looks great. I mean, you kindly sent us some footage. Steve Hastie's done it as well when he was over there. Oh, he's gone. But Stu, give us your views of how Dubai Mags is going from an outsider going in.
No, well, it's grown all the time. I mean, I go over probably for about 5 or 6 games a season and watch it. So from the transition from the last bar to the new one is probably went better than Mitch and the rest of them on the committee that have made the decisions. It's probably went better than any of them could imagine. And there's like family sections, because in Dubai you can smoke in the bars, where that stopped people wanting to bring the kids and stuff like that. So they've got family sections, and you get to see people. Well, I'm watching, as he's here, as an outsider because I don't go there every week. But what you do is you see people like relationships forming, friendships forming, and it's not just initial nod because everyone's together supporting Newcastle United. It has become generally one big family, and you're looking at over 200 people a week going to watch Newcastle United games play, and like the team, it's only going to get bigger and better. And I think it's fair credit to Mitch, Julie, and everyone else involved. I know James has been a part of it as well, but there's so many unsung heroes there that have made it work and made it an enjoyable experience for everyone who attends. And the only thing I think they need to give more than 7 tickets for the drinks, but that's just me.
Yeah, Mitch, before your internet kicked you out, just about now, these things happen across there. Dubai Mags, how's it going?
It's going fantastically. It's funny enough. I was out last night for dinner over the road from Brooklyn Bar where we used to go. So nipped in for a couple of beers in Brooklyn Bar last night, and went in when they had the England South Africa rugby on. And Brooklyn seemed to have become one of the things they've done since we moved on is they've got South African rugby fans in there. It was packed full of South Africans last night, and what a totally different vibe. And good luck to them. I hope it all works out. They did us proud for a while, but we're definitely, there was maybe 50 odd South Africans in there, and it felt packed. So God knows what it was like on the night we beat PSG and won 150 odd on a Wednesday night. And that's the difference. We usually cope with the numbers. The growth is phenomenal, as Stu says. I'm seeing the return of people who haven't been along for a while. That's what we're trying to do as a committee, is listen to everybody. Something I've got to try to get across to everybody all the time is that it's not Julie's supporters club, it's not my supporters club, it's everybody's supporters club, and we're there to listen to everybody and try and make it everybody take a bit of ownership. And I think people do, and I think that's quite clear. And I think at our peak, we get another big game. I think we'll top 300, which I think is nuts for an expat supporters club, really. I think that would probably make us close to the biggest in Dubai, because at one time that was definitely Liverpool, but they're going through a schism at the minute. They moved from Goodfellas and went somewhere else, and now apparently seem to have splintered into 2 separate groups, and which is sad for them, but great for us. And so it's really has felt something special. And when we had Peter over the other week, that had a different vibe about it, and we're finally able, because of the reach we've got now, and because of the back end of the membership, and because of the back end financially, that people are prepared to put their hands in their pocket and help out. we've been able to bring Peter over, and that'll not be the only player we'll be able to bring over soon. We've got plans to bring more across, and I think that's moving to the next level. Getting the official recognition signed off by the club, that'll be another next level thing. It looks for sure now we'll be the first of the new official supporters clubs once legals are happy with everything and sign everything off. And that'll be a pretty monumental moment, and at least then I can try and help support our services with our understanding of how time zones work.
Time for the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website is mrvickies.co.uk. Email them info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. Congratulations to them on their Travel and Tourism Award 2024. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels, no interchanges. All excursions included. Find them at their website www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And don't forget, we are also available as a podcast on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast providers. If you get the time, please hit the subscribe button. It does do us a big favour. Hit the like button, which is the thumb under the video. That helps the channel grow. And click share to share to your other social medias. You can also hit the join button and become a member. Some dates for your diary. In aid of Newcastle Cat and Dog Shelter, the Long Sands play the Clooney. That takes place on Saturday, January the 4th, 2025, with support from Lilac Lane and the Chris Norris Band. Tickets pre-sale are £15 from newcastlelegends.com or from the venue direct. Peter Beardsley will be doing a talk-in at the Tyneside Irish Centre. That takes place on the 10th of January. Tickets are £30. VIP tickets are £60 and you can get them from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with the entertainers takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle on the 24th of January. Kevin Scott, Steve Watson, Steve Howie, John Beresford, Rule Fox, Peter Beardsley, Rob Lee, Keith Gillespie, Liam O'Brien, Darren Peacock, Paul Bracewell, Lee Clark and Killer Kill Klein are all going to be there with Gibbo, and you can get your tickets from the box office 0191 243 1171 or the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. Lee Clark will be at the Gateshead Leisure Centre. That is on the 31st of January, and tickets available from the Leisure Centre 0191 250 5066. Les Ferdinand will be at the Newcastle O2 City Hall the 6th of April 2025. That is a 12 o'clock start until 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. And Will Scott's book on the entertainers is out now. £18.99, over 380 pages and a lot of unseen photographs. You can buy that book now from newcastlelegends.com. And we do have some fanzines remaining. If you want to buy an NUFC Matters fanzine, issue 1 is still available, again from newcastlelegends.com. And please take your time to flip onto our other channel, The Word on Blake 7. Please hit the subscribe button and help that channel grow.
And back live tomorrow night, of course, 6 o'clock with the Fans Forum. And then we're doing another Blake 7 podcast tomorrow night, just after that, 7 tomorrow. So don't forget to tune in, go and give that a subscription. Just want to say as well, thanks to everybody who came to the Derek Wright book launch. Fantastic night, great stories. We did manage to record the audio, so we will put that up as a podcast. Derek's kindly agreed to us to do that. And it was about just over an hour of great stories with Joe Allen hosting it. So really good. And I know that quite a few people were there who get in the chat and all thoroughly enjoyed it. The book's great. And I did manage to remember to get Stu's book as well, which he kindly donated £100 to charity for. So thank you for that, Stu. And I did show you a picture of it. I know you're very happy. So that's great. But yeah, he started off saying he didn't think he'd ever do any of these kind of things. And I think he got a little bit of a taste for it, to be honest. He was really good. Joe put him at ease. It was good to see Kevin Carr there as well, giving him a little bit of support in the crowd. Good to catch up with Carsey. Again, questions do come in different angles and on different forums. Our Facebook group, you can join it. Just search NUFC Matters. Mick Mullane says, we are backed by one of the wealthiest owners in world football. We are a club without debt, and their ambition is to take us to the very top. Yet there's three constant themes that follow us. The first is that PSR rules don't allow us to spend. The second, ATP rules limit our ability to bring in lucrative sponsorship deals. And thirdly, we're constantly told we must make a big sale to free up funds. Make it make sense, please, lads. Stu.
Steve, it's an agenda from the media as well. They don't like the idea of Newcastle United being successful because they're all very cosy with what they've got. We don't need to sell a big player. And I think if we look at after we lost to Chelsea away, they went in overdrive, didn't it? Isaac's definitely signing for Arsenal. Bruno's leaving. Gordon's going to Liverpool. All of this was going on, and it was to unsettle us. And I thought it was a masterclass from Eddie Howe when he says if these players want the Champions League, they've got to prove the Champions League players. And I'm sure he said something a lot stronger behind the scenes to these players. You know, like, get over yourselves. Don't put your ego first. Put your teammates first. And if you think you're that good, prove you're that good, because no team in the Champions League is going to sign a player that's, if we're using Isaac, who's scoring 1 goal in 12 games or something at that stage, and he's now scored for Sweden again last night. So that's 5 games in a row he scored. And sometimes even the very best of us need a kick up the backside. And sometimes they need to be reminded of what their role is, and the fact that we've responded in the way we have over the last few games shows that Eddie Howe is the boss. It shows he's got the respect, and it shows the players are willing to run through this imaginary brick wall that a lot of sportsmen are accused of running through, but they're willing to do it. And I'm in a position where I'm calm because I'll look at it from the other side, and I know a lot of it's sensationalism and scandal from the press, but we all know that they do it for clicks, and that's how they generate their income. But really, if we look at the bigger picture, you have to always be careful because the grass isn't always green on the other side, and these players they're like brothers in arms, and I think they went through this they needed the metaphorical slap across the face, and I think Eddie Howe's given them that. And if come the end of the season one of the players wants to leave, that's different from someone having to leave. If we were going to spend the best part of 70 million on Gay, then we don't need to sell anyone, do we? We've got money to spend. And if you look at last year alone, with I know George is a big advocate of this, that all the extra revenue that was brought in, the shirt sales, even the stack to a point, there's more and more money coming at this club. They don't need to sell. What is happening is we're restricted to grow the way the players want to grow, and you have to understand that the players do want the very best. Their careers are short, but I think now they're starting to realise they can do it at Newcastle United, and a couple of, or at least one shrewd acquisition in the January window should set us on a way where we can genuinely challenge for the top 4. So if that's where we finish at the end of the season, why would any of them want to leave? because we wouldn't have to sell them, and that's the difference.
Yeah, we all get Mick Mullane's frustration, don't we, Mitch, really, with what he's had to say there.
Yeah, we know categorically, we're being artificially throttled. The world knows that now. As the words Newcastle Amendment slip so easily out of so many people's mouths associated with clubs other than Newcastle United, from the media, from social media, from all sorts of places, that we have to keep one eye on sales, because, let's be honest, we've been terrible sellers. That's why we had a bit of a scramble at the end of the last PSR cycle. And that everything we don't spend in one window now rolls forward into a next window, which may be bigger and more strategic. And again, I'll bring everybody back to this. I've made this point on a couple of shows now. With the players we have coming up to the end of contract, the summer window next is a serious window for us. And so the more we don't have to spend in January, the more we've got to play with in a much more complicated and difficult window to navigate in terms of squad management. I don't think that's hiding behind PSR. That's recognising that we have been traditionally shit sellers. And that's one of the things that sits on Paul Mitchell's desk to improve. So I do think, though, if a shrewd addition in January is possible and will strengthen my push up the table, I think it will be made.
Interesting stuff. Plenty of questions coming in. Again, it's all financial. I will try and move on slightly. Something we've not really talked about on this. Blue Rhythm Boys asked us about this. He goes, Pat, what's the panel's thoughts on the Coote situation? I mean, I feel, I feel when these kind of things circulate that, there's always there's another side to it. But on this occasion, it looks fairly damning, Stu. When you're in a public eye like that, and you're in that kind of position, you've got to be squeaky clean. And no matter what people think of him as a referee, he's made a major faux pas by the looks of it on more than one occasion on this. So yeah, I think the authorities have probably taken the correct action with David Coote, Stu.
Definitely, it's sad to watch, and I know there's you can make a case for why should he lose his job, but I honestly think how can he keep his job? He's in a privileged position, and for me it looks like his ego has run away with himself, and it's like everything else. The more times you do something, the braver you get, the more you think you can get away with it. You just need to get caught once, and that's it. But it shows disrespect or a lack of regard if he thought that he could sit there and do videos and never think they would come into the public domain. It really is. Some of the quotes he said where he thinks he's untouchable and things like that. I mean, we've had all the jokes. He's the top linesman in the league and stuff like that, and that's being all said and done. But if that's his habit and that's what he was doing, then don't advertise it. Because you don't need to give Liverpool fans any reason to feel victimised or to feel hard done to. They'll create themselves. But when something like this happens, you have to side with them. Not to the point where he was being rude to them because of about them and what he said about them, but maybe it's how he said it. Because I think generally most people agreed with these, apart from Liverpool fans, of course, with his thoughts about Klopp. If you look at the images of Klopp ranting in his face and shouting at him and belittling him, you can understand he's a human, why he has this distaste for Jurgen Klopp. But to use the words he did, knowing he was being filmed, I just think, not that he deserves everything that's coming to him, but at the same time, you can't expect anything different. He's in a position now where he thought he was beyond reproach, and hopefully it's a wake-up call for all referees and many people in different walks of life. As I said, you just need to get caught once, and that's it. And for Coots to say what he said, it was distasteful, it was wrong, it was arrogant. But at the same time, it shows that you put people on the TV and all of a sudden they get this alter ego and they get mixed up between reality and this image of themselves. And what he's done is he's more importantly, he's let his fellow professionals down, the other referees, because they're going to get so much abuse. There's going to be so many fingers pointed now, so many wild accusations at any referee who makes a decision that you don't agree with. And if more than anything, he should be charged with bringing the game into disrepute. But I'd be very surprised if he's officiating in the top league in this country, well, in the UK ever again.
Or any league, I would say, Mitch. It's a big fall from grace, really, for one of our officials.
Yeah, and the fact that he thinks a Travelodge is a great place to stage a drugs party, I think, raises certain questions. Sorry, I'm being flippant, but I think we're looking at something which is a deeper societal problem. It's not that long ago that we as football fans were being blamed by a previous government for basically the cocaine problem in society, and now it appears one of the officials is badly affected by that. The videos of him with the person he's with, who apparently is a former professional cricketer with Nottingham, you know, where they're on that settee and, to my eyes, way at the hell. And it was a proper 4 a.m. and I'll tell you another thing kind of rant, which then has been videoed, then has been sent to someone, followed by another video saying that's got to go nowhere, mate. Well, that and a number of other videos seem to have gone plenty places, mate. And that's the problem. Once you start videoing yourself doing all sorts of stuff and thinking that you're untouchable. His life is obviously going to change and change significantly. He needs help and he needs support for that, like anybody in that situation would. But as Stu rightly points out, it brings question into every decision that he's made, either before, either as a VAR or as an official on the pitch. And he's revealed certain biases that he should never have revealed at all. And yeah, he's certainly entitled to that opinion, because Klopp went at him like hammer and tongs in the game that he's talking about, and it wasn't very pleasant. And exactly the kind of thing that Klopp has a reputation for doing, people didn't like him for. But in your situation as an official, you can't allow that to be publicly known, no matter what you're on, whether it's Tide Pods or bloody whatever else. And it raises so many questions that PGM will have to address with a lot of their officials, I would imagine, unfortunately. And again, we're talking about integrity of the game. It boils down to removing integrity from many levels, and that's sad, because again, when you're talking about high stakes games, about games which could see teams relegated and cost millions and millions of pounds, I'm sure as hell you want to be sure that the person operating your VAR is 100% compos mentis and as straight as a die as can be when it boils down to big decisions like that. And it's it's terribly sad. It's a very difficult situation, and it's the kind of problem again that the game can do without right now when there's so much else going on.
Barry Hogan asks if you're going to apply for the gap on the FAB, Mitch.
I'm not even aware that there is one and who stepped down at the minute. I'm not up to date with that. I've sort of switched my brain off over the last few days. So I'll need to know who's, because the only one really I can apply for would be the international role.
Yeah. Well, Barry, is it the international rule? Let us know. Barry did send us a spreadsheet. I haven't had time to look at it today, but 32 players Newcastle have been linked with already for January. So it looks like it's going to be a busy time at St James's. Good evening, Krista. Hi, guys. What are your thoughts about Joe Linton and Pope putting the importance on winning the Carabao Cup? Well, I'd say hooray to that. And it's what you would expect. And I would imagine that they're probably all keenly watching my £1 bet, Stu, at 500 to 1 for Newcastle to win the treble. So
I hope you win it. I really do, or at least get one leg of it, because that's all we want, isn't it? Just to win one trophy. But I think it gives an insight to the mindset of the players that they're desperate to deliver for the trophy, and it shows that a trophy for the fans, and it shows a great understanding of what playing for Newcastle United means. And I think if you asked every player, they would make it the top priority, because it's the one the closest to winning, isn't it? You know, we're 90 minutes away from a two-legged semi-final, so in effect, 4 games away from lifting a trophy. The FA Cup, you've got to win 6 games. Premier League, we've got another 27 games. So this is the one with the best chance, because it's the one that we've got we're still in it. That's the thing. We're one of 8 teams still in it, and without being disrespectful to Brentford, we should be putting them to bed pretty early in that fixture, which puts us into the last 4. And do you know what? When people say, "Oh well, it'll work for us because if we draw against Arsenal, Liverpool, or if we got Tottenham, if they beat Man United," there's always ifs, buts, and whatever. I'll take whoever we're getting the semi-final, because whoever we're getting the semi-final, if we don't beat them, we're not in the final. If we do beat them, we won't have to play them in the final, if that makes sense. So I'd quite happily have an Arsenal over 2 legs or a Liverpool over 2 legs in the semi-final, and we'll see what happens. But you have to be in it and win it, and we're still in it, and it shows that the players really, really want to win. So I know it's Pope and Joelinton that have been questioned about it, but I'm sure every single player that is in that squad would be of the same mindset. They want to succeed, and I think that's testament to Eddie Howe and the team, where they all understand the importance of delivering a trophy to the club that they play for. They feel part of it. It's not just that it's a job for them, they actually feel part of it. Whereas if you balloted the Arsenal players, the Liverpool players, the Tottenham players, Man United players who are still in it, it wouldn't be of as much importance. So if desire to win a trophy won your trophies, we'd probably win one every year, wouldn't we? But it's not as simple as that. But it's heartwarming as a fan to know that it's on the players' mind, and it's something they really want to do collectively. So it's of course it's good news.
it's a good way of describing it, Mitch, isn't it? Heartwarming, but it's what you would
Very much
expect.
so.
And they've been to the final recently as well.
And seeing everybody on the same kind of page. You know, I had a discussion with Peter when he was over, and it was just before we played the 2 Chelsea games. And he said to me, he was like, right, which ones would you prefer to win, the league game or the cup game? And I said, actually the cup game, because that one really could make a big difference on my season going forward. And he was absolutely in agreement, because he thought he was going to be the odd man out. But very much so the feelings from the Dubai Mags as a whole, when we talked about that openly during the Q&A, was that, yeah, that's the game everybody wanted, and it's interesting that that's the game that the team wanted to win badly as well. That's quite clear. And to have everybody on the same page and pulling in the same direction openly is fantastic feeling.
Mitch, it's not just the season going forward, but if you remember what we mentioned earlier in the show, we would then be seen as winners. And yes, that association of winners would gain us thousands of new fans.
Yeah.
And again,
we become a different beast again then, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, I know we talked about when we went to Australia and the
penalty to England, lads.
The economics of it. Sorry, Steve, what did you say?
Penalty to England.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was important. Sorry. So when Newcastle went to Australia to play those friendlies, they got paid £3 million, which was more than what Man United got for winning the FA Cup. But for someone like, for a club like Newcastle, you get even less for winning the League Cup. I think it's something stupid like £200,000 or something to the winner, because the way the money gets distributed amongst the leagues, it's not a great shake. But what it is, it's a trophy, and the fact that we haven't won one for so long, that's the story that would be attached to it. That would go viral. It'll go worldwide, and the scenes that would be, the parade. If and well, there would be a parade, wouldn't it? But all of this would see fans who are, for potential new fans, I want to be associated with that club, not just the successful, but that club. Look at the passion of their fans, and it attracts so much. And we talk about getting the monkey off the back and stuff like that, but that first trophy is so important, and it is great that Joelton and Nick Pope understand that. But to be honest, when they're asked these questions, they're not going to say anything different. But you could tell it was genuine, and it means so much to us, to them, and also to the owners, for the reasons I was given, for the financial implications it can have. When I say implications or ramifications, I mean in a positive way, because 200 grand's neither here nor there. It'll be 2 players' salary, but the extra revenue that would generate long term it's scary to think how big a successful Newcastle United could become.
1-0 to England. Harry Kane with a penalty. Ireland down to 10 men now as well. Scales, second yellow card. So England take the advantage and could win the group.
Steve, I'm struggling to hear you again.
All right. Can you hear us okay, Stu?
Yeah, I can. I've got England to win 4-0, by the way, in case everyone thinks I'm totally biased.
All right. No problem, mate. Mitch, it must just be an issue with your internet with me for some reason. I'm not sure why, but if you... Yeah, he's dipped out again.
Well, you keep cutting a little bit, Steve, but I can fill in the gaps from what you're generally saying.
All right, maybe the internet at this end as well then. Okay, no problem. What are the professionals expecting the January transfer window, seeing they haven't spent any season ticket money yet? Lots of questions coming in about the transfer window. And again, like we always say, it can only lead to speculation on, if we start putting things out there. Craig says, can we sell Almiron? That's a hypothetical question, so we can talk about that. Will Wilson be fit by January? Who are we buying in January? Yano says, if we recruit a right winger, who gets dropped? Which is a great question. Gordon, Barnes, Joe Linton. Or do we now continue with Joe Linton in the position and see how it goes? Yeah, I mean, you look, the transfer window, Barry's already said it's due. 32 players linked already with Newcastle. But, I mean, I still don't think it's going to be a busy window, Stu.
Well, there's a lot of questions and all of that, but you have to recall it's not just 11 players now. It is a squad game, and Joelton's 1 card away from being suspended, and then the team has to change anyway. And then you've also got injuries that could happen, and I think the way Newcastle are going forward, and it might have been a phrase that Mitch used last week, was horses for courses, and we discussed it at length when we were together last week. And for certain games away from home, it makes sense having Sean Longstaff in midfield, but for games like West Ham at home, when we have to be we're going to have more possession. You need your more creative players, and that's why I believe Tonali will start against West Ham, injuries permitting. I think he'll start against West Ham. Regarding the transfers, I don't want to commit anything where Stuart Penman said this and he's wrong, and it costs us too much money to make predictions, because you know what I'm like. If I say something, I stand by it. But there is money to spend. What I don't like is on social media, I see a lot of people...
Anthony Gordon has just scored for England, 2-0. The assist from Livramento.
Oh, phenomenal.
I did mention you 2 to go. So we're in a position where we have money to spend, but if we know that, the rest of the clubs know that. But what I don't like is this, with the way people are getting out Marquis. He's rubbish, he's this, he's that, and they've been quite derogatory towards him. And ultimately, it wasn't his decision. And I think if he was sat in a room and asked, do you want to play for Crystal Palace and Newcastle this season? And at the start of August, I think he would have said Newcastle. But he's not in charge of his fate, because he's on a contract, and it's up to that club to get as much money as they can. Now, we believe that they asked over the odds, but that's their right. He's their player. They'll also know that his transfer value will depreciate simply because his contract's running down. I'm not averse to going back and getting Gay, and then you've got 3 of the England back 4, playing for Newcastle, which would benefit the England country as going into the World Cup. So this for me, I understand it. They need a ball playing centre half to go along with another ball playing centre half who will hopefully come back better than ever from injury and Botman. And you can't have enough top quality players. And I think Gay, the fact that he plays for England, he's familiar with a lot of the players from Newcastle that are now in the squad, and he's Premiership ready. He knows what the league's about. I don't think he'd have to go through the obligatory Eddie Howe initiation process of 2 or 3 months before you're actually a regular starter. I think he could be thrown straight in. And as fabulous as Shaw's been, I think if we've got any aspirations to be consistently qualified for Europe, this will probably be his last season as a regular starter. And that's no dispersion to Shaw, because I thought he was one of our players of the season last year. But age catches up with us all. So regarding spending in January, will the spiv that does the talking for Crystal Palace allow his ego to have his prices lowered and sell to Newcastle, because he's obviously got a distaste for or dislike for Newcastle United? That's up to him, but it's not Mark Gay's problem. It's not his fault. I think we will buy, but I'm glad they didn't in the summer spend money just for the sake of spending, and they kept the powder dry for the reasons that Mitch alluded to previously there, that they're not just going to throw money at anyone or anything just for the sake of spending money. They'll spend it where it suits, and if they can't get what they want, they won't spend it. So that's how I'm looking at this transfer window coming up. If they get the right player that they want for the price that they deem to be suitable, they'll buy the player. And if they feel that they're getting overcharged, or they get offered players that they don't want, then they won't spend the money. But I've seen the comment selling Miggy, selling Wilson. I think Wilson will score against West Ham next week. I think he'll come off the bench and he'll bag the last goal, but that's just another Penman prediction. The selling players is easy when we're sitting here saying, well, this player's not good enough for this squad. This player's not good enough for this squad. But you need to have someone who's going to buy these players. And that goes back to right at the top of the show. The club that, or the playing squad that the new owners or the existing owners inherited was a club that was a squad that was free falling into the championship, and possibly even worse than that. There was no one of any real value, although I still think we could have got more for Alan St-Maximin. There wasn't many players that you think, right, we could sell at a big price, and we're still victims of that. But as Mitch talked about players coming out of contract, etc., not only will it free up places in the squad, it'll release more money to spend on salaries. And it is a pivotal transfer window coming up. Not so much January, because I think they'll get 1, 2 if it fits. But I think come next summer, that's when there's going to be wholesale changes, and I think we've got the right man in charge in Paul Mitchell to go and say, right, this is what we're doing. This is what I've identified. These are the areas that we need to, because it's not just about 11 players now. And I think we discussed it on the last show. We've probably got about 15, 16 tops that you could say I'm comfortable with any of them starting. We need to get at least 20 players that are capable of starting in that league without weakening the team. And that's how far we are behind. So we should all be grateful for the fact that they're overachieving. But if you keep overachieving consistently, that becomes the norm. And then you need to add to it. So in January, yeah, I'm sure they will buy if the price is right. But I'm relaxed with it.
Hopefully you can hear us, Mitch. My internet and your internet are at odds with each other today. 3-0 to England, by the way. Gallagher's got his goal. It was onside, so 3-0. Stu's bet looking good. Scott chipping in on this says, I don't think we'll sign Gahey. Palace won't sell in January. It could relegate them. You'll go to Liverpool for 35 million in the summer, I reckon. And I started this off when you went off and came back on, Mitch, just by saying, well, you know, we never speculate on here. We can always give an opinion, you know, and what oh, he's gone again. Whatever will happen in the transfer window, I was going to say will happen. But we will crack on because Mitch, unfortunately, is not having the best of times with his internet. Gary says, does anyone know what the role of the Premier League will be if an independent regulator is appointed? I mean, it's more to do with what the independent regulator's role is, Stu, I would have said. What are they actually going to regulate? What are they going to be in charge of? And how does it affect the Premier League? Is probably what I would ask. It's a strange situation, but this is definitely coming in with the Labour government, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a $64,000 question, Steve. Is what powers would they have, and are the government now running football? And if so, do they want to take the money from it, or do they just want to curry favour and say this is what we're going to do? And sometimes we have to be careful what we wish for, because you've got the Prime Minister who gets a free box at Arsenal, doesn't he? So will it really be independent? It makes sense to a point where take the power away from the Premier League, because they seem devoid of making fair decisions, and they do seem to be easily led by certain clubs and a bit disrespectful to other clubs. But will this independent commission really be independent? And that's to me, that has to be a huge question mark next to it. How do you make it independent? Because if you look at the independent panels they've had for some of the tribunals, they're not independent at all. It's anything but independent. So that shouldn't really be used as a word as independent, because it's not.
Yeah. Mitch isn't going to join us anymore. It's died a death, his internet. So thanks for your suggestion, Mark. But we will call that a day with regards to that. Alan did say, great show, lads. Meant to be going over to Dubai at the beginning of next year for a week of teaching. So I'll be popping in to introduce myself and buy you a pint. Alan, I'll pass that on to Mitch in the chat. Sean, I will take your question. I have got a few minutes left. With Riyadh Air sponsoring Atletico Madrid for 400 odd million, is that not market value now? What we need, Stu, can we bring in a sponsor for that amount of money, do you think?
Yes and no. You could argue that Atletico Madrid are an established European powerhouse, so they're entitled to get that money. But also, the revenue generated by the Premier League far outweighs the money that's generated by La Liga. So you can have parity both ways. You can make an argument for it, and this is why I still believe they're waiting for this case with Manchester City to run its course before they start making decisions. A successful Newcastle United, value-wise, is worth more than a successful Atletico Madrid, and that's it. So for me, that's a marker that's been laid down. And I think the 400 odd million, that was spread over like 7 years or something like that. But it was a stadium sponsor, front and shirt sponsor, etc., etc. You could also argue that we could be worth more. And if you look at it to what other clubs are getting sponsored for front of shirt sponsors and stadium sponsors, such as Arsenal, they're getting in excess of 60 million a season. So why can't we ask for the same?
Okay, Mitch did try to come back on there, but I've just told him not to bother. I've passed your message on, Alan Curry, if you're still in the chat. AJ, thanks for this. He says, do you think Joel Ellington might be unsettled due to the latest burglary in his home? It's a strange one, isn't it? This player security. I know these people get paid lots and lots of money, Stu, but we're seeing this on a regular basis now. Not just in Newcastle, mind. It happens. The length and breadth of the country, and I do know players have social media, and it like everybody, doesn't matter who it is, can be an ordinary person in the street. If you have social media and you're posting pictures of you on holiday, then people know where you live who are of an unscrupulous position, the chances are they might come round and do something, and try and break into your house. And that's it's happened not once but twice to Joe Elton now, and he had to put out a bit of a statement on his social media. Quite sad, isn't it? And I'm not sure what kind of security they have, but you'd think it would have been upped after the first time.
You'd expect so, but it's for me, it's the Facebook society. I've never been on Facebook, and I never will go on it. My only encounters of it was watching people or listening to people talk about it. I've had this for my tea. I'm doing this. This is me. I'm going on holiday. They might as well just advertise to burglars that they're not in. And please, can you take what you want from my home and close the door behind you? But it doesn't excuse it. The fact that just because you're a professional footballer doesn't mean you should be excluded from the ills of society. And if anything, you'll be targeted more. But it's not a nice thing. Anyone who's been burgled, it's not the possessions, it's the thought of someone's been in your home. And if we go back a generation, that's why Ginola left us, wasn't it? Because his house had been burgled and his wife couldn't handle it. That the fact that someone had ransacked their home and it never felt the same again. And it's a bad thing, but there's a lot of rumours that it's an organised squad, isn't it, that seem to be targeting professional footballers. And you get people who can be less sympathetic, saying, well, you earn thousands, so you should be spending money on security guards and this, that, and the other. But everyone's got the right to live in their own home. But I'm sure he has got burglar alarms. I'm sure he has got CCTV. But for anything, there's always a way. There's people will always, if they want it bad enough, they'll always find a way to get it. But I thought it was good the way he said, oh, any possession that's of any value is no longer in the home. So hopefully it is the last time. It's sad that it's happened, and I really hope it doesn't happen again. And I'm not trying to justify being burgled. The point I was trying to make is it happens to people who don't have the financial backing that he can. It's the personal possessions that are important, because I'm sure he's insured. So if someone took his 80-inch screen, he can get a new one. But it's the feeling that someone's been invaded your privacy. That's what burglary does to people. And it's sad that it's happened to him twice, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. But he's off his strong mind. You can see that, but it's the effect it has on his wife and children. And, you know, and that's the bit what that could make him uneasy. But he's from a country where crime is rife. But you said yourself, Steve, you could go and sign for a club in London, and the likelihood it would happen there. You know, so it's not him that's personally being targeted. It's probably the area. It's just that because he is in the public spotlight, it gets highlighted more. But it's sad, and hopefully it doesn't happen to him again. And the people who are doing it get caught.
Yeah. That is the end of the professionals this week. We'll be back next week to look ahead, of course, to Monday Night Football. Newcastle taking on West Ham at home, and that will be interesting. Big thank you to everyone who's watched. Big thanks to the moderators in the chat. I am back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, with a fans forum. Look forward to seeing you all then. And if you haven't bought that Entertainers book by Will Scott, go and buy it now. NewcastleLegends.com. It's available on Amazon. Go to the back page shop in Tyne, Cramlington, or Eldon Square, or the Metro Centre, or WH Smith's or Waterstones. You can get it in any of those venues. Stu, thanks, mate. Take care. See you soon.
Just want England to score one more. You never thought you'd hear those words come out my mouth.
Fantastic. Take care, mate.
Enjoy. Speak soon.